Hi guys, welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to discuss about how to handle the exceptions in the Spring Boot. So normally, we know right. So how we are going to handle the exception in the normal Java applications. To handle the exceptions in normal Java applications, we are going to follow the two patterns. One is by using the try catch, another one is by using throw and throw keywords. These are the ways we are going to handle the exceptions. What is the exception handling? What is the exact meaning of the exception handling? Exception handling is the way to convert system generated messages to the user friendly messages. That means, so whenever exception is occurs, the program is going to terminate abnormally. Okay, so but what we have to do, so that is not a good practice. So we need to handle those exceptions to stop the abnormal terminations and give the proper message to the user. So based on that, user can understand what went wrong. Okay, so if you take an example, now I have a example. Okay, I have the employee service. In the employee service, I want to get the informations by using the employee ID. For this purpose, I need to get the employee information by ID. So when we're trying to get the information of the respective user, what we have, the system is going to check whether the user is available or not. If it is available, if it is give the response, there is no issue. If the data is not available, so it is going to throw an exception. It will create the exception object and it will throw that exception object. So but the end user directly won't receive the exact exception message. What they will receive, they will receive the 500 and it will server error. By seeing this, the technical message, the user cannot understand what went wrong. So to avoid such problems, we are going to handle those system generated messages to user friendly messages that we are going to call as the exception handling. In the Spring Boot, we are going to, how we are going to handle the exception handling, I will show you in a practically. Okay, so let's take an example. I implemented one API. Let me explain the API first. This is my REST controller. In this REST controller, I have a class. The class, the input is the employee ID. It is going to call the employee service. It is going to the employee service. It is going to check whether the data is available in the, for the respective user or not. If the data is available, it will return the information directly. If the data is not available, it will throw an exception. Okay, let me run the exam. Let me run the code. Okay, so this is my code. So let me try to access that one. So if you see, the data is there. So that's why we are able to see that information. If I call the 2, so again we have the data and we are able to see the information in the response. But when I try to get the employee 3, then we don't have data. So that's why it is throwing as an internal server error. So if you see the log, in the log we are able to see the message user not found for the employee ID. But when coming to the client interaction, so postman, so we are able to see the system generated message, that is internal server error. So it is not understandable and it is not going to give the exact reason what happens wrong in the application level. Okay, so that's why to avoid these problems, we are going to create exception handler in the Spring Boot. So to create exception handler in the Spring Boot, what we are going to do is we are going to create a class and we are going to annotate that one at the rate rest controller. At the rate rest controller is a combination of the at the rate controller advice plus at the rate response body. At the rate response body, it will convert the Java object to JSON object, and the at the rate controller advice, it will make our class as a global exception handler. So why, what is the meaning of the global exception handler? So normally if you don't use this concept, we need to write the exception handling in each and every REST controller, but that is not a good practice, right? So that's why in real time we are going to have the multiple REST controllers. Each REST controller, it is going to perform the multiple operations. If any exceptions occurs in any one of the REST controller, so the exception is going to recognize by JVM. JVM is going to identify the exception, global level exception handler, and it will map that respective exception to the respective methods by using the exception handler. Let's say an example. In our case, what happens? So we created the exception handler. So this is our exception handler. And then after creating the exception handler, we need to map our exception to the one of the method. So what we are going to do is here we are going to mention the exit exception handler. So which exception we are trying to handle. In our class, we create the one user defined exception. Okay, this is our user defined exception. How we are going to create our user defined exception? We are going to create a class and extend the runtime exception and override the one of the and add the one of the constructor. Okay, we added the constructor. This is the way of the creation of the user defined exception. Once the user defined exception is created, then we are going to use that one by using the throw new keyword, user not found exception. So this is the exception we're trying to throw here. So if you are trying to throw this exception, we need to handle that exception in the global exception handler. So here we are handling. So here exception handler is the user not found exception. Okay, handler exception, user not found exception. This is a user not found exception, right? The input, this method. Here, while sending to the back, we need to send a proper response to user. So that's why I created one custom error message, error object. The error object is state message and time term. This is my error object. I am preparing that error object and I am keeping that in the response entity. Okay, set stated and body. I'm adding this one. Whatever the message we are going to get here, same thing we are going to append here. Okay, so this is the way of the mapping the exception. If you want to write different methods, I mean if you want to handle the different exceptions, similarly you need to map those exceptions to here. Then only the system will identify the respective method and it will execute that. Okay, now let me try to run the application and give the head. We'll see what happens. Before handling the exception, we are able to see like this. But after handling the exception, what we are going to see? After handling the exception, let's see. You can see after handling the exception, we are able to see user not found error. So clearly, it will give an indication to the users how we are going, what is the problem it caused. Okay, so if any exception occurs, it will give the response like this. So if we see this response, we can understand what went wrong. Okay, if there is no error, then simply we are going to see the response. Okay, now let me explain you how the exception handling this method is executing here. Okay, now so this is the rest. I'm making the call. Once we make this call, it is going to reach us the rest controller. In the rest controller, it will map the respective method and execute it. It will map this method and execute this one. Then it will go to this method, and in this method, we are going to check whether the data is available or not. If the data is not available, it is going to throw this exception. Once this exception is thrown by the service, it will reach us to the JVM. JVM will check whether the global exception handler is created or not. So this is the global exception handler. Okay, then JVM identified global exception is handler is available. Okay, so now again, so what type of exception it thrown user not found exception. It will check whether the respective exception is mapped or not. So it will check exception handler user not found exception. It is mapped. So once it is mapped, it will execute the respective method. So it will the create the error object and will send the response back to the user. So if it didn't match, if it is didn't match, then the method won't execute and it will throw the normal internal server error only. It would handle. So if it is matched, then only respective method executed and the response will be reaches to the server client. Okay, let's practically test this. Let's comment out this one and try. So now previously we are able to see this message. Now I commented this one. Why? Because exception handler is mapping the respective exception and executing the method, right? If we don't map this one, then let's see. Even though if we have the exception handler, the mentioning of handling of the exception is more important. If you didn't handle it, it won't recognize and it won't execute the corresponding code to us. It will throw the default error messages only. So that's why the handling part is very important. If you want to throw any exception, then the handle part is very important. The respective handler we need to do here. So the exception handler annotation will map that exception to the corresponding method. So this is the way we are going to handle exception, global exception in the Spring Boot. Okay. Now I prepared one document for you. Okay, this is the document I prepared. So let's see exception handling. What is exception handling? It is a process of converting the system defined user message to the system defined message to the user friendly message, that we are calling as a exception handling. So now you can see this response. This is the response we are getting if you didn't implement the exception handling. So if you implement the exception handling, you will get the response like this. So let's see how the flow will work. This is a client request. So once this is a client request, once the client request is initiated, it reaches to the controller to service, service to map lookup. It will check whether the user is available or not. If the user is available, it will return the response. There is no problem. If the user is not respond, it will throw a user not found exception. Then once the user not found as exception is created, it will reach us to JVM. JVM will check whether the global exception handler is available or not. If the global exception handler is available, it will check whether the handle method is implemented or not. If the method is implemented, then the respective method is executed and it will send response back. Okay. This is a project structure and this is a custom exception how we are going to create. So to create the custom exception, what we supposed to do, we need to create our own class and extend one of the runtime exception and any and implement the one of the super constructor. Okay. So then error object, this error object is a response object. Here you can see this is a response object we are sending back, right? Okay, let me run this application. Okay, now you can see. So this is the response object. This object you can prepare, okay, based on your requirement. So this is not going to be fixed one. You can prepare whatever the object you want based on the project requirement. Okay, the response object we are going to prepare. Okay, so now coming to the some of the few interview questions patterns, let me explain the interview questions. Okay, so common HTTP codes. Now we set up the exception handling. We are setting the error code as a not found is 404. So you can set up the error code whatever you want. So here we have the few error codes. If it is 200, okay, 201, bad request, 401, 403, forbidden, 404. Like this, we have the some custom. We can have the error codes defined by the framework, or else you can use the custom error codes also for your application perspective. What is the interview questions? Coming to the interview questions, what is exception handling? Exception handling, we can simply say exception handling is the process of the converting the system defined message to the user friendly messages, that we can call as a exception handling. Why you use the custom exceptions? So if you don't use the custom exceptions, what we are going to use, we are going to use the default runtime exceptions. If in any case, if you use the runtime exception, the code is not going to be readable format. Based on the business specific, we need to create the custom exception, we need to throw it, then only the code will be look like more efficient and readable format. Okay, exception handler. So it is going to map the exception to the respective method in the global exception class. Okay, so this is the some few of the interview questions we have in this document. So if anybody requires this document, please join my WhatsApp channel and ping me. I will share this document to you. Thank you for watching this video.